Gonna go ahead and call our meeting to order. I say I appreciate all of you being here and pretty much on time, so starting a few minutes late. Hopefully some others come in and may have to join us because we want to move ahead. But our meeting will start with our roll call. Mr. David A.C.
Here. June Chin Jointer, is that a new commissioner?
Yeah, the new person.
Okay. She's gonna be here.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
She's been confirmed.
Floridia Jackson, Bruce Kramer,
Here.
James Latta.
Yes, sir.
Did I pronounce that right?
You did, thank you.
Great. Okay, John Merritt.
Here.
Okay, where's Morgan? Sandeep Pednica. Alfreda Pena. Kalisa Shaw. Carlos Shaw. Ralph White. Okay. We do have a quorum and we can move on. And we have our minutes here. Did everybody have a copy of the minutes? As they are.
No,
Okay.
they're not completed.
Okay. In the fact that they're not completed, what we'll do, we're gonna bypass those and defer this to our next meeting, and we'll approve the entire minutes for that particular meeting, which is last, April's meeting. And so we do want you to have them for the record, and the next month's meeting, we'll have the entire, meeting. I think there's a transcript or something that's missing, and we'll include that in the meeting, if that's okay with everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So, moving right along. Ms. Datton is here. She's gonna introduce our new board member. Other members not here, so she's gonna introduce our new board members and welcome member board.
Hi, I'm Debbie Reed, Intergovernmental Relations City. Dr. Latta is here. He is one of 2 new board members that we had approved by the council. I will let him tell you his background. And then the other member is Dr. June Chin Joyner, who is a professor at Lemoyne College. And both came highly recommended and passed through with flying colors. So welcome to the new board members. And then we can, the ordinance stuff, we can work through, like the election of board members or election of officers, and we can work through all of that now that we're kind of closer to full. But I still have a couple of appointments up my sleeve.
Thank you, Dabney. Doctor, would you like to have expression?
We'll pick up your time. Jim Latta, worked in psychiatry, medical school here, been in politics for a while. It's my office, I'm not gonna answer it. Been around Allen Crone a long time and met Dabney and all that good stuff. And just want to help the city. Been here for 40 years. Many things going on, and I think hopefully can contribute something. So that's all.
We'll say welcome aboard.
Thank you,
Glad to
sir.
have you,
Appreciate
and
that.
Gonna put you to work.
No problem.
We did get a chance to, I believe in the last meeting we had, we met Mrs. Joyner, but she was another. So
She wasn't.
we did meet her at the library when the director addressed the group, so she was there. Fine young lady, works with Lemoyne College, very busy in the community, and hopefully in our next meeting, or maybe even latter part of this meeting, she may be here with us. But again, welcome aboard to you guys, and you come at the right time because we've got some things that we're getting ready to do as relates to where the board is heading. I think we've got our first case out of the way.
last month. And we did that. We thought it was quite successful, but it was in the midst of some controversy. And we're working on that now. The Commercial Appeal did an article on our being here, our first case, but it was not very favorable as related to the board. We thought it was a good meeting. We thought it was an open meeting, but they differed. So I think that's something we're dealing with now, and we're waiting on some clarity on that. But all in all, I think we had a great meeting, and we'll be hearing more from that, the results of that particular meeting from our investigator who's done some homework as relates to some of the information we were trying to acquire. But again, we want to welcome you guys aboard, and want to say that in my overview, I have some concerns, and I'm glad we got an opportunity. I don't know how many of us got the report from Alan Wade's office, and especially as it dealt with the subpoena power. That was an issue that we thought had been dealt with, but we find out is not dealt with. And we've got to go back and really look at it. This was issued July 6, 2015. And we need to look at the date as to when the board was finally approved before the council, and see what kind of language it has as relates to subpoena power. Because as it stands here, the city council can subpoena, but it's only as it pertains to city council business and no other agencies through the city. And I don't know if that was, I mean, they didn't understand it, or, you know, it was something we totally overlooked. I don't know.
No, the ordinance was, first reading was April 21, 2015.
Mm-hmm.
Second reading was May 5, 2015. And the third meeting, it was November 3, 2015, if you all remember, those of us who were here.
Right.
At that second reading, Director Armstrong asked that it be continued until after the election. And so it was finally approved and signed by the chairman of the council on November 17, 2015, and signed by the mayor on November 20, 2015. And that ordinance contains the language for the subpoena power that if this board requests our liaison to request the council to issue a subpoena, he will do so. And it's interesting, at least from my perspective, that, you know, Mr. Wade's opinion dealt with the subpoena power. He attaches to his subpoena the proposed ordinance, which is in fact the ordinance that was eventually adopted, and it has the executive session language in there. So it's well, that language on the executive session is on page 10. It's in section D, and it says, at the conclusion of the public hearing, the board will adjourn and meet in executive session. At the conclusion of the session, decisions reached during the meeting may be made public. In any event, decisions reached during this session will be reported in the meeting minutes distributed during the next public meeting. So for Mr. Wade to say that the executive session, he was not aware of it, I guess he just forgot.
Yeah, so that deals with the issue with the newspaper, okay? And so we're clear on that. What I want us to bring clarity on is the subpoena.
Well, I want clarity on the subpoena, but also on whether or not the ordinance violates the state open records, open meetings law. I've asked our liaison, Mr. Morgan, to ask the city attorney, not the council attorney,
right,
the city attorney, to give us an opinion on that. And
we're working on it. Okay.
Yeah, we just want clarity. And I was sharing with one of the individuals in the newspaper, we have no particular agenda here. We're volunteering our time. We want to do what's right based upon what we think the law says we can do and our limitations are. I think that's what he's saying. So once the city comes back and, clarifies that, then we can move on. Because we don't want to be operating outside, what the state law calls for. And so, as soon as possible, we can get us something. And now, we're addressing the issue of subpoena power. And that is, as we look at the report again from Mr. Wade, it states that we don't have that power, nor does the city council have that authority to subpoena police officers to our meetings. And is that the way everybody reads?
That's the way I read it.
Yeah, and so we're stumped when it comes to that, and we've got to go a little further with that, because I think that's what all of our meetings, et cetera, was about. Though that was the tooth that we were trying to put into the board, and without that, we're pretty much at square one. And that's where we're, so we really need to relook at Ms. Habert, who was at that particular time one of the council members. She pushed for it, and we assumed that had taken place. But based upon these, that's not the case. So we need to determine where it is we need to go from here. And maybe there's something you guys can look at. Because it's not, got fish out of the water. We're flapping, but we're not getting anywhere.
The only thing I want to throw into this conversation is, I think I've stated this before in previous meetings, but an opinion from the city or an opinion from the city council's attorney is an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't judges, they don't rule on cases, they don't put forth law. So if we get an opinion and we don't like it, well, the next obvious step is to, let's say we need to use the subpoena power. Let's say that's the only way we're going to get to the bottom of the case. That's when we attempt to use the subpoena power. If they shoot us down, that's when we let a judge make that decision. That's how it works. You don't just take an opinion and go, oh, well, this attorney thinks this, so therefore I'm going to treat it as though it is law, when it's not. So, I think the ordinance is pretty clear that we have subpoena power. However, and this was written before that ordinance was passed, so, I think it's great for us to get opinions from people. I think that's going to be helpful as far as understanding the issue, but ultimately, if there's a disagreement between attorneys on this board and an attorney in the city council or an attorney up downstairs, then at the end of the day, it's going to be the job of a judge to determine, not just us spouting our opinions back and forth. I don't know. That's all.
Well, in agreement with what you're saying, and this is what I said earlier, this paper here came July the 6th,
Mm-hmm.
but our final renditions were in what? November. And we need to see that. We need to see those documents other than these here. This is July, but since that time, there have been many meetings, and we've made different concessions and changes, but we have no document showing that. We need a document showing, that we in fact do have the power to subpoena officers, so forth, who approved it. And we had the approval of the city council at that time. But that is why we signed on and moved ahead. We had the approval of the council after the director did ask that they would postpone it. And here we are with these old antiquated documents as far as we're concerned. So would you happen to know who would have them? If it was recorded through the council, who would have that final document?
We have the final ordinance.
Yeah, we have
The
final ordinance.
records office, the council records office.
Mhm.
Well, this is a certified copy of the ordinance by now.
Okay.
In the meantime, a couple of things. John, I think you brought up something that has to be a policy and procedural matter, and it needs to be followed accordingly. That's one thing. So based on that, I want to make two things. One is that can you set up a step as to when and how we do it? That's the first thing. And the second thing is that I want to propose a motion to follow on those steps.
Yeah.
So can we do that? I would like to do that.
Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think the problem is that we actually have to need to use the subpoena power
Right.
before we can create any kind of neat reason to have a case.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that then why don't we set up a step for reaching to that?
Sure. That's just gonna require us getting a case where we need a subpoena. Like the last case, we didn't feel we needed the officers to come in, but if we have another case where we do feel the officers need to come in, or a witness that just doesn't show, and we need we're gonna need to actually use the subpoena power before we can put that in motion, I guess.
So the example that you're giving is what I feel is that we want to dig a well when we are thirsty. Why don't we dig a well before we get thirsty?
But it's already in place, and what he's saying is, when it happens, we will act on that. Then it becomes place of the judge to do it. So it'll automatically put itself in place when it comes, and we have to, based upon what we think we have, subpoena power. When we subpoena a police officer or petition the city council to subpoena a police officer, and then they tell us we don't have the authority to do it at that particular time, then we take it to a judge.
I understand. What I'm saying is that
It's
why don't
already
we get that
what you're saying is
clarified?
already in place.
Technically, maybe we could get an advisory opinion from a
Yeah.
judge. I don't know. Is that even? No, it's not possible.
No, they don't
I'm
let
gonna
you.
I'm gonna take his opinion on that then.
It's already in place. I mean,
Yeah.
we're assuming we can do it based upon what came out of that ordinance. And when our position is contested, then we take the next step and letting the judge make a decision.
I'm just reading from the ordinance. It says, and this is on page 3, it's section 28-154, purpose, powers, and duties. This is the second paragraph, and I quote, "In order to carry out its functions, the board is authorized to request through its council liaison a subpoena to effectuate an investigation or compel attendance by an officer or witness for a hearing, period." It goes on, I'll paraphrase the rest of it. It goes on that our liaison needs to investigate it, and then he's the one who has to take it to the council. And if the council fails to support the request, then we, the board, reserves the right to file a complaint with the local or state ethics commission, the Tennessee Human Rights Commission, or the Department of Justice. And so it doesn't say we can issue a subpoena on our own.
Right.
And, but, you know, if the council fails to issue the subpoena, then I guess we could bring a writ of mandamus. There are other things that we could do to get that, or we could ask the Department of Justice to do it.
And I'll step back because I'm on the State Human Rights Commission, and you bring it to me and we'll make sure it gets done. But their steps already in place. We just take them in the next case that we have where we may very well need someone subpoenaed for whatever, whether it be a witness, a police officer, whomever. It's already in place. Now, as to whether the board acts upon it, that's another thing.
You know, there's that same provision, that same paragraph, says that the council shall, and it uses the word shall, and all of us lawyers know what shall means, provide by ordinance the penalty of penalties for contempt and refusing to obey any such subpoena or to produce such text, papers, or other evidence. So, I mean, there's some teeth.
Yeah, it's already there.
What did Worth say he was gonna do with council at our last meeting
Yeah.
in this discussion?
He was going to
What's
seek.
he gonna do?
I thought he was going to seek clarification on the subpoena issue, and also on the executive session issue. I think he was going to meet with the city attorney.
We're working on, but was looked at and see if we could figure out exactly what the law says about it.
Is Alan the city's attorney or?
He's the city council's
City council.
attorney.
So I take it that we don't know if council met last, we don't know if council addressed this matter at all. We have no idea, is that right?
He's not being here. We don't-
Wait, so we don't know? Okay.
But based upon what the ordinance says, we're standing on solid ground. And if city council does not back up what the ordinance says, we have the law on our side. And so we just have to go through the process. And here it comes. But I think we're good with, what we've read. Make sure we hold on to those documentations and don't let anybody come in and sabotage them. But I think we're good, but that was a real concern of mine, and I need to get a copy of that, I need to get a copy of that.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
Just because I'm not an attorney. If we needed to do what you were suggesting, how long, just what would be an approximate time frame for that to occur? Or somebody,
I guess, depending on how it was framed, we could file a declaratory judgment action and ask the court to rule on whether the subpoena power rightfully belongs here or there, or whether or whether going into executive session in accordance with the ordinance violates the state open meetings law. Depending on who our defendants would be, and I guess it might be the mayor and the city council, or just the city council, and they would have 30 days to answer the complaint. And depending on the briefing schedule and what judge or chancellor we get, it could be as short as 6 months or less, or it could be more.
we could be in a paralyzed situation. I'm just trying to understand this. So we could be in a because I know the wheels of justice are going very slowly. We could be in a paralyzed situation for a period of time in terms of ability to act on resolution of the case. I'm just wondering about if there were some measure of urgency in the situation, which there always is, but I mean the sense of timeliness. If we could end up in a bind and unable to proceed with the investigation, that's all I'm asking.
Well, what we found in the past, and Mr. H has been here for a while with me, we've had very few cases where we would actually need subpoena power.
Yes, that's what I gathered.
Yeah, but in case we need it.
Yes.
And so, the first case we
Yes.
come into, we get an opportunity to open it up. But in the meantime, we can continue to flow. But if we happen to run into that situation, where we need to have a police come in or a witness who, then we can do it. So that's why this is important. But for the most part, most of the cases go through without even having to resort to that. So
I think-
it wouldn't really interest.
Well, the subpoena power is one issue, but, if we can't go into executive session, then
Yeah.
there's a question, do we want to have our deliberations open? Or do we want to go in to follow the ordinance and go into executive session? And I think that's more crucial from a time-wise, because we've only heard one case and we haven't made a decision on it yet. And I guess it could be challenged because we went into executive session to deliberate.
Right, or what you would have to do, the remedy, if there's found to be violation, is that you just have to re-deliberate in open session.
Where does the
says that we
ordinance
do.
stand as of now, though?
But right now, the
With that.
ordinance states that you can, that you go into executive session, close executive session,
Yeah.
that's what the current ordinance says.
Okay. And so, I think we follow that procedure. That if somebody else wants to file a suit or challenge it, that's up to them.
Well, there's also another, based on what Councilman Morgan said, there seemed to be some discussion or that the council may revisit this on its own and amend the ordinance or pass a new ordinance.
That's what I heard him say.
So I guess,
I mean, both issues, the problem is that the ordinance itself conflicts with
That's what I
another.
get.
Yeah.
With the state laws.
State law with the,
Is that
with
what
the
you
Open
said?
Meetings Act area, and then with the other, the subpoena issue, it's the city charter versus the municipal code.
So my suggestion is that we actually need to see what exactly precisely the state law says. Because again, like you guys said, these are opinions and whether that really fits and should be catered to the ordinance, and then the things that we're talking about is something that we also should look into and not just put it on others to let us know that, hey, this is what you do.
well, following up with what John said, and to answer the doctor's question, if we get, or when we get an opinion from the city attorney, let's say whatever decision he renders, at that point, we can either agree with it and modify our position, or at that point, it's the doctrine of what's known as rightness, and we have a real controversy that's subject to a declaratory judgment. We can take that opinion and send it over to the courts and say, here's the opinion, we differ with it, or we'd like you to render an opinion on who's right.
And with the executive session, we're almost right with that now, we're just waiting on an opinion, but that's already taken place, and so we already know that that is subject to go further already. However, the subpoena power, we have not yet had anyone that we felt we needed to subpoena, so until we do, it's not a case of it's right, I guess, is the best way to say it.
Well, maybe, Mr. Robinson, I guess one of the things we wanted was to get additional information from the juvenile court.
Yes, sir.
And have you requested that?
I have, sir.
And,
I think that's gonna be an
well, for instance, let's say the juvenile court says they don't want to give it to us. That's where we could say, well, subpoena it.
So what we're doing, we got two things working here,
Freedom of information.
and they're both contingent upon what report we get back from the city and, well, and then the city council on both of these ordinances. One is based upon what happens when we act. We have to go through the process then to challenge it. So we have to wait on that. We can't say we're gonna do this before it happens to us. But once it happens, we can challenge it as it relates to the ordinance here. Then we're waiting on a file from the city to let us know where we are as it relates to the open, policy as far as our meetings are concerned. So hopefully in the next meeting, we can bring clarity to both of these issues, okay? But these are some issues that I think are very important to this board for us to to work and be effective in what we're doing. So, I think in the next meeting, we should have enough information with the right people working on it, and, we'll look forward to, we have to put the fire into some of the city people to get this moving along. So, I'm pretty happy. I was kind of, upset all month when I realized I thought we didn't have subpoena power, but I feel a little bit better now. I see that there's some light at the end of the tunnel. We just wanted to bring that out so that all of us could know where we are, even the new members that can come in and just know, because ours is not to be here deliberating on, the organizational structure. But being that it's new, we're just coming in, we just want to get clarity as to where we are. Then we can move effectively in dealing with these cases. So far, though, we don't have another case. other than the one we had last month. And our investigators here with a report as relates to some of the evidence of some of the things we were looking for. So Mr. Robinson's going to come and kind of give us an update on where we are with the case.
Yes, sir. This is Larry Brown, case number 12-015-031. Board Member Merrick asked me to determine what documents the juvenile court gave the police when they went to his home, and also determine if both parents' name was on that document. What took place is what they call police notification. Juvenile court central intake called MPD, asked him to go by the home. The officer had no document when he went by the home. The officer only had one name. He had the mother's name. They do that because a lot of times the father's not in the home. So when an officer arrived, he had no document, and the only name he had was the mother's name.
Okay. I think that stemmed from the father saying, I stopped the police, and he said, I don't have any business with you. The business is with the mom. Now, I think some of us misread, our files and said, well, they had the same name, but that was not the case. They did not have the same name, and the boy had the name of the mom, and this police officer was given that name. So when this man showed up, said, I'm the dad, but he didn't have the right name, police said, I don't have business with you, and then things started to happen as a result of that. I don't think some of the things that transpired gave them the right to brutalize or whatever came from that. But I think that was the point we were trying to establish. Did the father try to impose his authority really when he didn't have the authority based upon the name? Now, one of the questions I ask is, now, the juvenile court did not have anything in writing, right?
That's correct, sir.
They just gave them a name. And so I think it's up to us to determine if that was enough to establish probable cause or whatever. And so it's out to us now. But that is the report the investigator brought in. So we can look at that and we can start moving that around the table, and whatever your opinions are, we want to put those out in an open meeting so that we can make a decision as to where we need to go from here with this particular case.
Well, my recollection, and I didn't bring that file with me, is that the boy in juvenile court had the same name as the father, but the police only had the mother's name, which was not the same. And my opinion is when the police got there, when the first officer got there, he said he wanted to speak to the mother, and the father said he wasn't going to wake her, and that he knew what was going on. That was his son there. And I think the officer was well within his right to say, I've got orders from the juvenile court with the mother's name on there. I want to speak to the mother. And one of the things I wanted to hear the actual transmission from the officer when he called up for backup, because in the written report it says that on that transmission you can hear commotion in the background, which obviously would have to come from the father, because the way I remember the report is that the officer was in a calm, cool voice when he was talking to dispatch. Officer would not need to call for backup if he didn't think he needed additional help from the way the father was acting. So that was the first point that I felt. The second issue in contention was how many people were on the porch, and did the father reach for the second officer's baton or flashlight when he was knocking on the door? If he did, I think the police officer was well within his rights to grab that arm and pull it behind him. He never put cuffs on him. And so then there's a discrepancy on what happened when officer took him off the porch and took him back to the cruiser. You know, the complainant says he slammed him against the car, and no one else corroborates that. The daughter didn't see that, and the officer said he didn't. Now, you know, I go back to all the times I sued the police in the 70s and the 80s. They used to put John Gaston turbans on them. And so if this guy, if the complainant, I shouldn't call him this guy, if the complainant was unruly, couldn't be controlled, you know, he would have been wearing a John Gaston turban. And there were no bruises. You know, so, you know, I don't see excess force from the record or from the testimony. And I would, under our ordinance, you know, find that, you know, police officer, it did not engage in excessive use of force, and that the complaint should not be sustained.
Any other opinions?
I agree. Medical doctor examined at the hospital found no swelling or anything, so.
I'm open to sustaining, but I just want to add in a policy suggestion. I do think that, you know, one of our roles is to try to prevent the same type of case from coming across our desk in the future. I think, and obviously our recommendations aren't binding. You know, people we recommend and agencies we recommend opinions to can be taken or not, just as an opinion from another, you know, institution would be. But I think that we should at least suggest to juvenile court that in the future, when they send an officer out to update a parent on a situation, that they get both parents' names. I mean, we have a lot of people these days that have, you know, stepchildren and other things. People have different names. That's part of our society now. And I think it's important that you know, if you're going to go give somebody a report, make sure you include both parents' names so that we don't have a mix-up like this in the future. And the only other thing, my only sticking point besides that, because I do think a lack of injury is a strong point to be made in favor of the officer, but we will never know whether the complainant actually reached for the officer or not. I'm not willing to just accept one person's word over another's, and because I will never know that, I just would like to at least issue the statement that it'll be nice when we actually have access to body cam footage, because if we had the body cam footage, we would all know exactly what the complainant did that day, and it would be much easier to make this decision. However, that being said, and I'll wrap up here, I promise, I'm okay to sustain based on the facts that we do have, as long as we issue some kind of, I don't know, recommendation, I guess, to the juvenile court that they give both parents' names to the officers in the future.
Let me kind of say to that, that's great, but some of these marital and non-marital situations, mom doesn't want dad to be on that. I mean, I've seen, I just had the experience last week. The young man was in an automobile accident, and the new husband was there, and the daddy was there, and that relationship was so terrible that she didn't even want them calling the biological dad to even report, you know, so it's kind of difficult for them, but I understand what you're saying.
Sure, well, we can do it based
Yeah.
on the address of the
Yeah.
person that they're going to speak to, because if there is a
Yeah.
problem there, they wouldn't have that
Right.
person's name on there.
And I think the thing is, that would just kind of give strength to what you're saying.
Sure.
Is that they document it, you know, police go out, there should be some kind of documentation rather than just the name of the mom and so forth. And so that's something we could suggest to them, that it's documented, so that this kind of situation arises, then we'll have that, and we won't run into that kind of controversy. Any other opinions on this? This is a very unfortunate situation. They happen. Many times we would, if we could, you know, satisfy both sides of the complaint. And for that, I kind of keep my files and I go over them again to make sure I don't miss anything. And I looked at some of what we discussed in the last meeting, the testimony of the young girl and the attitude and those things. You know, it totally contradicts what was said from the father. The father, as the report says, was always in the yard. The little girl says they were all on the porch. And you know, and some other things that entered into it, they were just contradicted the whole story. But at the end of the day, I think if his actions had been different, we would have had a totally different situation here. But I don't see enough evidence to say that there was excessive force or abuse by the police officer. Again, Ms. Stacy said, went to the hospital, there were no reports, bruises, etc. And again, very unfortunate it had to move to this point. As far as I'm concerned, but it becomes our opinion, so there's not enough evidence to sustain these charges.
Just ask him if he can waive you out of it.
So do you need a motion or something?
Need a motion to,
Yeah, but you can't be in that capacity.
to that effect?
Which would be, you make a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we vote to, and when I say the word sustain, I mean sustain the previous ruling, not the current complaint, but to sustain the previous ruling that the officers did not use excessive force. However, that we add the caveat that, a suggestion, and I want to make sure I get what you said in there too, that we add in the caveat that our recommendation to the juvenile court that they give officers a printout that includes both parents or guardians' names, assuming that they live in the same house as the person that's getting reported on. If it's available. If it's available, and that way we don't risk anybody outside the home being listed on there.
I think it's a platitude. It's very nice, but our you know, we don't have any authority over the juvenile court.
No, simply a
And-
recommendation.
It's a recommendation.
What we'd have to do is ask the director, because that's where our finding goes to the director, and suggest to him that he talk to the people at juvenile
Yeah,
court.
all we're doing
I'm
is,
okay with that.
we're making a recommendation.
Sure.
It goes back to the director. He makes the final decision anyway.
I'm happy to edit that motion to reflect that.
Okay, we'll straighten that up and then we'll.
Sorry.
We'll vote on, and the wording we want on it is that. I mean, you
I
want.
guess that you know, that we reviewed the complaint of Mr. Brown, and that we find it has no merit.
And we recommend.
We recommend that the director discuss policy changes with the juvenile court on how they issue notification to both parents if that information is available.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? So we're gonna carry that, and we'll be hearing back from the director as to his response. Usually that's
It's gonna be within 10 days.
10-day turnaround, so the next meeting we should have his response. But I think it was a good case, and for those of you who are new here, you know, this is some warm water to be learning how to swim in, but we're on new grounds as it relates to the Civilian Review Board. There's a few things we've got to have ironed out through the city, et cetera. And once we get that, you're going to find that many of the cases won't be as serious, but when the opportunity
presents itself and we have to look at subpoena power, et cetera, we need to make sure that that option is available to us. So we want to continue to pursue that, and hopefully in the next meeting, we'll have some clarity as to where we are. Then our councilman will be here too. He wanted to be here, but I guess other business took him away. But we've got that case behind us. Hopefully next month again, we'll have response from the director and we can move ahead, whoever that director might be. But I think our acting director very competent, and I think we'll hear from him very shortly, 10 days.
Just a better clarification. The determination needs to be sent to the plaintiff. Should that be signed by you as chairman, I guess?
Right. We can get that, go down there, I'll sign it. And, get they would like it. One other item, update on CLERB badges. Ms. Virginia, you want to just tell us where we are with that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. On the badges, and Mr. Chair, if I may use your badge, you don't have to remove it, but just as an example, to show those board members who, some who are new and some others who may not have had a badge in the past. That's the current badge that we are looking at ordering for all of the badge members, for all of the board members rather. And one of the differences with the badge that we are contemplating ordering for all of the board members is that the new badge will have civilian law enforcement review boards. That badge being passed around, you will note that that particular one does not have all of that wording. And so, in conversation with the chair, that he did ask me to just check to see if the new badge could have the civilian law enforcement review board versus civilian review board. And in talking to Mr. Curtis, who is the person who produces the badges, he also makes the badges for the Memphis Police Department as well. He mentioned that he doesn't foresee a problem with putting all of the wording on there that we're requesting. In the past, the wording was not as much. He cut the wording down simply because it was to make the lettering larger. Now, with the new wording of the whole name, it will be slightly smaller. So what he suggested to me is that allow him to make one badge, so he's making a badge for Mr. Robinson, our investigator, so that we can look at that particular badge, see if we like that format, and if we do, then he will go ahead and produce all of them for us. So I was thinking actually that, and a previous boss told me don't ever assume anything, but I was hoping to have the badge for Mr. Robinson for this meeting, but I'm assuming that I'll get it next week, and so I will have it for the next board meeting. He being Mr. Curtis, has assured me that once he gets the okay, it should not take very long for him to produce all of the badges. So now one of the other things that I will be doing, Mr. Robinson and I will be either sending you an email to just make certain that we have the correct spelling and the correct styling of your name, so that we can make certain that we have that as you would have it to be. So at our next board meeting, we should have, as I stated, Mr. Robinson's badge, and we'll go ahead and get all of them ordered for you. Are there any questions for me regarding the badges at this time?
What if, I mean, just to, we have waited, I know, for quite a bit. and we could wait for support. But what if the same thing, same design was sent in 2 formats with different font sizes, and then we can decide 1 or 2, and then instead of waiting for 2 months for us to get the badges, get it everybody together.
And that's what, well, basically, what we're planning to do, if that's what you're asking me. Once we get the one thing.
What I was suggesting is that not even wait for that and just have 2 formats emailed. What's his name?
Mr.
Curtis. Yeah, so he could email the 2 formats, and then we can decide 1 or 2 and then go with it.
If that's the board's wishes, I have no problem.
Is that okay with everybody?
If that's the board's wishes.
Okay.
Either way is fine.
I'm not too concerned.
Yeah.
Just one request from me, if I could.
Sure.
I'd like to drop the doctor thing and just be Jim.
Okay.
That's okay.
Outside the hospital, I'm just Jim. Okay. So can we just be Jim, or you're David? You
Can
are
I-
David, right?
Can I collect it and put it on mine?
Or a small malpractice. Just drop the doctor, okay?
Okay, well, I tell you, one other thing that really will expedite the process for us is, we have a sign-in sheet, and if you will look at how your name is styled on the sign-in sheet, Mr. Robinson probably have it before you leave. And if what's on that sign-in sheet, if that's okay, or if you'll just note on there some changes, then we can certainly, go ahead and,
Yeah.
with Mr. Chair's approval, we can certainly go ahead and do that. I don't foresee a problem.
You can't read what I've written on the sign-in sheet. So let me try it again.
Okay, well, did
That's
you?
what doctors learn in medical school.
First year, right? In fact, you can't read it, you can't see it.
That sounds good with me. It's okay with you guys. Yes, sir.
Mr. Board Chair, we missed a couple of things, if you don't mind. Let me-
Okay, sure.
We recently had a workshop with the police director and his deputy chiefs. It's a
Okay.
very effective workshop. We discussed the Citizen Police Academy. That starts in September. He's going to get me the information. At that point, we'll come up with a schedule to do the ride-alongs. And he suggested that it would focus, each board member would ride in their community, and I will bring you further information upon that. The next thing is, I requested early on policy and procedure from the police department. I'm scheduled to get a DVD next week. Once I receive that DVD, I'll make copies so each board member will have a copy of the policies and procedures. Also, I'm sorry, we're good? Okay. Also, at the last meeting, when the subject came up about executive session, I reached out to Nicole. Nicole is the National Association for Civilian Oversight and Law Enforcement. We also joined as members of that. Now, their recommendation was that the executive sessions be open. However, they did refer that the decision should go to the city attorney. Okay. In reference to this sign-in sheet, I need to make sure that I have a good email address on everyone, because at this point, I'm going to turn your email address over to Nicole, and they'll be sending you their newsletters and information like that, and they'll be a good resource for us. Okay? All right. Thank you.
Great, appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, can I just
Yes, sir.
elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah.
I was at that session with the police department hierarchy. They had everybody in command there. They had the interim director and the deputy director. They had the major who's in charge of the internal affairs. They had the chiefs of the uniform divisions. Can't remember who else, but I also had the police legal advisor. But they stressed that they do not see us as adversaries. They see us as in cooperation and in a partnership with them. They were very open with us. When we asked for the policies and procedures manual, they told us they no longer keep them in printed form, nobody does anymore, and they will send us the digital form. And the major from the Internal Affairs stated unequivocally that if there's something in the record that comes over to us that we don't have, as I mentioned, the transmission, just ask and they will send it over. I just thought it was really, of course, like with the old, it was called the Red Squad, they wanted our picture and our fingerprints on it. They already had David's in mind, so.
Yeah, pretty good.
It was a good meeting, and to say this, Ms. Wilson will tell you what happened when I first came on. I requested a meeting with the director, head of internal affairs, police union, and all of them to really establish that atmosphere. I remember a few years ago when we did this, when you went into that room, it was like you were in an ice box. Because everybody were adversaries, even police, the director, internal affairs, and all that. And so we kind of loosened their collars, and we said, what all of us want is a good police department. We got to work together. The union, I know you're trying to preserve jobs. I said, look, if you got police out there who are not people friendly, we don't want you to fire them. Put them behind the desk. I'll put them in the warehouse. He can keep his job, but he doesn't have people. So we kind of broke that ice. So when we had this particular meeting, they were on board, and he wanted to just meet with the entire board, and so that's how it came about. But I believe in working with people. Everybody has a point of view, and what we've got to do is we've got to learn how to compromise on that. And I know even when it came to this case, we had different opinions and so forth. Then we started to listen, become objective, and it's okay. I can see, so now here is where we are with it, and I think we made a good decision with that. And we're going to again report that to the director, and we'll get his response. But in the meantime, we'll send one back to the. There's something sealed up in my book, but we need to make sure that once we leave here, get whatever information or the response from the director is that we put it on the city website, so it is open. Also, we have a website now.
No, we don't, sir. That's in process. We'll discuss it at the next meeting. Yes, sir.
Let us make sure it is on the city website, and once we get ours in place, any information that you need as it relates to us, our meetings, etc., will be accessible to anybody who wants to inquire. But with that being said, I don't want to hold y'all. I want to hold y'all to 4. But y'all did a good job. And again, I want to say I appreciate you all. People don't have to give their time, but you do give your time and your talent, your expertise, and y'all making me smarter. I'm learning every time I come here. I listen to you guys, then I watch CSI. I might just go back to law school. But no, it's been good, been a pleasure being with you all, and if there's nothing else, okay, appreciate that.
I got you. And again, let me make sure I have everyone keep
Young man.
Yeah, call me or email me or whatever.
Even on this other issue.
Yeah.
Paul, I know he broke it. He ain't been in 3 times.
Anything crucial on this?
I've known you for a long time.
Oh, like that. Okay.
I can't even say it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the update. It's going well. It's been busy. I hated that I missed that last meeting.
You see, so
Martin? Oh, yeah. Yeah, my buddy went to law school down there. I'm not very familiar with Jacksonville.
Well, yeah, we got that, we can move.
That's not what I'm suggesting.
Well, my dad lives in Fort Myers. Is it good to see you, Dabney? You gonna be down at the festival?
I went last time.
You're down with it already?
I'm sunburned and I have blisters and I'm old apparently because I'm not sure I can do it in time. But I'm gonna try. Are you coming to the booth?
Real pleasure to meet you.
Exactly.
Good to meet you. Definitely. Thanks for coming. Please keep coming.
You know what I'm doing, but I,
Yeah, the life's got to worry.
I know that.
I think Andrew said.
Yeah, I know you were there.
The only way you could have seen me yesterday is if you looked at the river. We were on John Paul's
I saw
fishing
that
boat.
Facebook post. I know it's funny that only 2 of y'all had life jackets on. I'm like, was there?
John Paul's driving. I was like, I'm about to die.
Yeah.
They must have a service that.
That's where I'm like, serving at now. They can open up for meetings. No, we didn't know that's fine.
I know that.
It's really frustrating because we have, the state sunshine law says it's supposed to open the ordinance session, go to executive session, so that's gonna have to be resolved, and there's the one that worries me. That's, as much as I care about that issue, the much more important issue to me is subpoena. And
Oh, no. You know, it's,
Change it up again.
you're welcome.
And then.
Oh, that's the way it always is. That's no problem. We gotta be there. All right.
And what I think you said that was right, just have them send us, an email, photocopy, of what it would look like on both sides.
And then I'll just go and send it.
Well, what if he, put his arms behind his back, took this arm, all of that was in. I think you have to go. Based upon how you act, because.
they can get it, but they don't delegate it back.
Yeah, and so, notions that.
He can get the subpoena for you guys. So that can be done, like he just can't give the full, they can make the report.
July 2000.
Yeah, no, this is what started.
Definitely. And the only point he makes is that it conflicts with the charter, but I'm not as concerned about it. I think that's, I think. Okay. You said not so does it?
Yeah, so it's how they said it started. I say in Texas, like,
Robinson.
Thank you so much. Nice prize. Oh, there you go. And I have your email.
The good thing is that in the subpoena case, we're not conflicting with the state. It's a conflict with the state. I'm not too concerned about that. I think we'll win on the subpoena issue first. With the open meetings thing,
Exactly. It costs, so it wasn't no free thing.
Get my mama after he was on the car.
I just
So
don't see it as
we
worth fighting
understand
over.
that all of this is taking place. Then the little girl looked out and saw, he said, go tell him, get your mom, what your mom knows. And he said, those people are.
he'll be putting in findings on the website. So I feel like once that happens, it will work better.
She came up
I really do. 'Cause I mean,
and let
the only reason I'm so familiar with that. Yeah, the reason I'm so familiar with that is because we were having meetings. Because I did the research and said no, basically, it's illegal if we, because it's one or more, more than one. One elected officials, we're technically appointed officials there for rules violation of civil law. So I get that.
It was over, it was over, it was over, what you got? And I can, he can't read our bylaws. He can't read it.
He was out in New York. When she woke up, I mean, when she got up, the girl woke her up.
Yeah,
Right.
no, you're right.
And he was, yeah,
Would have been
yeah, actually, he was on the
Sure.
Yeah, I don't want them tinkering.
That's a code that
Thank you so much.
guy did a moment ago. I saw it, I missed it, okay.
How are you?
I'm on y'all, man, y'all, that's a beautiful come up.
I don't
One second, came back to find. That's not an issue. Acting like a phone. Because the kid didn't get injured.
Thanks,
when
you
the
too.
dad
Have a
was
great day.
children.
So I mean, I don't know. I think my goal was to, even though.
That's a good picture. And y'all got the little green thing working?
To me, it's very, and you guys do have the power to be very
I think
transparent.
we're all supposed to play.
And I know you've been on this.
Kramer accurately pointed out that we give it to the police
And
director.
when we
and then
talk
he
about
discusses it.
advocacy,
So I still like it to be on the
what are we
record that we
doing? I
suggest.
mean, who is to be the advocate?
I don't know, I think you need to get some.
Okay, see, that's a-
Please keep me in the loop. I'm ready to do the police training stuff.
Yes,
I'm
yeah, it's gonna be.
But it's unfair to the crowd, people who come before you,
Well,
not to have somebody who can help them.
yeah, well, see, when you say
Make sure that they.
in defense of this, we've been fighting to get where we
And I
are
appreciate
now.
you giving me that
And so,
opportunity
you know,
because that pretty much made
we
this.
can continue, because we can find anything, we make it. But just to get this, we're fighting for the people.
I ended up going to probation,
power
go get out.
to continue police. That was against.
Worked out though.
It worked out, it gave what we needed, it gave what we needed.
I didn't necessarily feel like I needed the training. I just needed to know what they had.
Exactly.
And now that, when I hear, okay, they only did have one.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, it's a pleasure
That's
to
fine.
meet you, and thank you for attending.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
You know, so there are always.
I'm sorry to ask y'all to do
That's
that.
okay.
I just hate
That's
missing
okay. That's
anything.
okay.
We're gonna try to get
But then we're talking about.
We
Sorry, I hate to be trouble. But that does, I mean, y'all know I don't miss meetings.
Oh,
So
ain't no problem, and that was an important one.
Yeah.
I felt like it was too.
That was important.
But I couldn't get out of what I was.
Go to the court, you know.
I know that.
But I read
That's
these
great.
things.
It's good to
But you know,
work
for
with
the
the
last
state.
10 years, I've been working as a labor representative. And I know when we go into labor.
Well, and I think they're gonna see once they see we're making fair decisions, that we're not just going after one side or the
Right.
other. I think everybody's gonna be happy
People
with the
that
board.
that are paid
Right.
to go in.
That's right.
And
That's right, and who are trained in the
and
process,
that's,
and in the procedures, and
And
in.
that's convenience that we don't have to do that. So
Okay.
if you can find us some pro bono folk to do that, we love it.
Good idea. Well,
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank y'all.
No problem, see you, John. I mean, I wouldn't have.
Here, I'll give you my card too. Y'all ever have any questions, y'all already get them.
Or some other people.
Oh,
Yeah,
man, I
that
told
may
you to
be
give you your card.
something.
I usually have like a
Is it
whole.
for your new office?
I know, actually, I'm trying to get rid of the older cards that, Attorney Friend made for me.
The same criteria.
But I've got the new
Criteria.
actually now.
They
Have you guys
have
found
The new
some
logo.
place?